Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine. We are in the chapter Supermind, Mind, and the Overmind Maya. And I have us at page 302. And we are always grateful to have our dear Ranga. We begin with existence plunging into an apparent non-existence.
Okay. So we are nearing the end of the chapter, Supermind, Mind and Overmind Maya. And earlier he has given you a very clear description of supermind and the overmind and the normal mind and the Maya, which goes on changing its character from the lowest level to the higher levels. Not only for Maya, but for everything, your view, your knowledge, your understanding of the reality goes on changing depending at which level of consciousness you are. That's a relativity, and spiritually also the relativity is valid, and also the physical world also relativity is valid. So he has been speaking about the supermind descending into overmind, and from overmind further until the one becomes the many, consciousness becomes the unconsciousness, subtle existence becomes gross existence, and even Ananda also hides itself in matter, and power also hides itself in matter. So now we are in the middle of the para, and we start from existence plunging into an apparent non-existence. Okay, so we start reading each sentence. Existence plunging into an apparent non-existence, consciousness into an apparent inconscience, delight of existence into a vast cosmic insensibility are the first result of the fall, and in the return from it, by a struggling fragmentary experience, the rendering of consciousness into the dual terms of truth and falsehood, knowledge and error, of existence into the dual terms of life and death, of delight of existence into the dual terms of pain and pleasure, are the necessary process of the labor of self-discovery. So he is talking of the involution, which is the plunging of Satchidananda into the apparent opposite of itself, and then he is talking about the difficult climb back, which is the evolution. So at the supreme level in Satchidananda, all that is going to be manifested is inherent in it, and it releases them one by one, like the seed which releases each part of the tree. And again, there is a plunging into oneself in the inconscience also contains all these planes of consciousness which are going to come out of it, like like this seed. So the higher also is a seed condition, and the lower also, the inconscience also is a seed condition. The only difference is, at the higher level, the seed condition is light, knowledge, consciousness, but it is condensed. Whereas at the lower level, all the things are there, light, consciousness and all, but starting from the opposite pole, that is unconsciousness, ignorance, lack of ananda and everything. So it seems to be the opposite. They are mirror images of each other. So both are very, very similar. Each is infinite, superconscient and inconscient. Each is infinite, each is one, and each is a seed form. And there is an evolution downwards, and there is an evolution upwards. The evolution downwards, you call it involution, and the evolution upwards, you call it evolution. So he is describing that now. Existence plunging into an apparent non-existence. Here we have to understand the word existence as the subtle substance, sat. Okay? It is often translated as truth. But truth is we think of truth as a mental principle. But it's not that. Sat is the present participle of the Sanskrit root as, to be, to exist. So obviously, that which is existing is the truth. That which is not existing is not the truth. So sat means you can take it as substance, that which exists, but very subtle substance. That substance becomes gross substance, apparent non-existence, which means the inconscience. Consciousness at the highest level into an apparent inconscience. Why apparent, we'll discuss. Delight of existence into a vast cosmic insensibility. In matter, there is no delight. You don't see it, but it is there hiding. Are the first result of the fall. He is using the word fall because consciousness seems to diminish itself and become the opposite. Subtle substance becomes gross substance. It loses its subtlety. Ananda loses its delight and seems to become the opposite of delight. Okay. And force also, omnipotence, becomes here absolutely the opposite in matter. There seems to be no energy at all. There is. And we have learnt also how to extract that energy. But it seems to be static, no power. So this is the downward plunge he is talking. So it becomes, he is saying, apparent, because consciousness, when it is descending downwards and reduces itself, continues to be consciousness. Just as light also, if you dim the light, it continues to diminish its luster, but it becomes not the opposite of itself, but the absence of light. So it is apparent unconsciousness. Why apparent? Because as there is a plunge downwards, the consciousness becomes limited. And if you bring in the one becoming the many, human beings are one of the many, and their consciousness is limited, and their means of knowledge is senses, which are limited. So you don't see the reality. That's why apparent. It is apparent unconsciousness. So the question arises, can man see through the appearance and see the reality even in the physical world? The answer is yes, because you can have a yogic consciousness even while in the body-mind life, and then you will see the reality even in the physical world. That's why it is apparent. Okay? So, existence plunging into an apparent non-existence, consciousness into an apparent inconscience, delight of existence into a vast cosmic insensibility are the first result of the fall. And in the return from it, this is the evolution. In the return from it, by struggling fragmentary experience. Because when we are starting from knowledge, you know where you are going. Because you are fully in consciousness and knowledge. So there is no distortion, nothing. You know where you are going. Your destination is clear. You are plunging yourself into the opposite of yourself. But when you are starting from ignorance, unconsciousness, and lack of knowledge, naturally, you don't know where you are going. So it's a struggle. So it's like a forest. I have a big forest and I have got a choice of, make it simple, only 2 roads. I don't know which one to take. I take one and I find out it's the wrong one. I have learned by my mistake. So struggles and mistakes are leading you to the truth. Error is not the opposite of, it is not to be seen negatively, it has to be seen positively. Each error helps you to find the truth. So that's what he's saying. So struggling fragmentary experience. So you have to struggle and fragmentary experience. Each experience you discover what is right and what is wrong, and then you go forward. This is there in all human endeavor. Even when we are going into space, very easy example. You make a mistake and your rocket falls. You analyze and find out what is wrong, rectify it. So next time you will make a progress. So this is, all our endeavor is like that. You go on learning through mistakes. So, struggling fragmentary experience. The rendering of consciousness into the dual terms of truth and falsehood, knowledge and error, of existence into the dual terms of life and death, of delight of existence into the dual terms of pain and pleasure, are the necessary process of the labor of self-discovery. You are starting from inconscience and you are discovering your true nature, you are going up. And this is a fragmentary process, and he is talking of the dualities. The dualities is easy to understand because when the one becomes the many, it's not limited many, it's infinite many. So this side positively infinite many, negatively inside this side also many. So naturally opposites come up. If light is there, truth, if darkness will be there. If truth is there, apparent falsehood will be there. That's why this consciousness becomes unconsciousness, and Ananda breaks up into the many, and if it is the many, you have pleasure and pain, both. So, Ananda becomes pleasure, pain and indifference. Power becomes incapacity, and all the different degrees of incapacity. All the different degrees, less, more. You can be more powerful, less powerful, absolutely no power at all. Same with consciousness and Sat. Sat is the substance which breaks up into here. We have found now 190 elements. So each, in fact, we may discover many more because 190 is not possible. It must be much more than that. We have to discover them. We have not yet discovered them. When I was at school, we used to know that there are 90 elements. Now there are 190. They have discovered more elements. So that is there. So, self-discovery. I read the next sentence. A pure experience of truth, knowledge, delight, imperishable existence would here be itself a contradiction of the truth of things. Okay?
Why?
Because of the plunge. He has talked of the plunge. And consciousness is expressing itself in truth and falsehood. Okay? Ananda is becoming pain and pleasure. So how can there be in pain and pleasure? It can't be the truth of things. The one is becoming the many, and there is a diminution and a distortion and a covering up. It gets it plunges into many, many sheaths. There is a physical sheath. Inside the physical sheath, there is the vital pranic sheath, mental sheath, etc. Like a Russian doll again. It's all compressed. So it's the opposite.
But I think the key word here for me is would here be.
Yeah. Here means the physical
on
world.
earth, yes.
Here means the physical world. So in the physical world, you can't have a pure experience of truth, knowledge, delight, imperishable existence. It would be a contradiction of the truth of things. It would only be otherwise if all beings in the evolution were quiescently responsive to the psychic elements within them and to the supermind underlying nature's operations. So he's saying it would be possible to have, even in the physical world, if you are in touch with the psychic element within you and the supramental element above you. Only the psychic or only the supermind won't do. You must have both. Is that possible? So that is Sri Aurobindo contention that the next stage of evolution, it will be possible. But right now, as it is at present, it is not possible. Okay, so it could only be otherwise if all beings in the evolution, were quiescently responsive to the psychic elements within them. By the way, the psychic elements, if you are not familiar with the word psychic, it's a divine representative within each being. The divine is there in the heart of each being and creature, but he is hiding. Okay? So that's a psychic element within them, and to the supermind underlying nature's operations. But here, there comes in the overmind law of each force working out its own possibilities. He has already told you that the overmind is the plane where all the possibilities start becoming real and they get the chance to express themselves fully. In other words, in the supermind, the oneness, think of the supermind as a prism. So the white light which is on top, which is Satchidananda, comes and hits the supermind and enters the overmind, and the overmind splits up this oneness into the many. Like the prism, it breaks up that white light which is one into the 7 colors. By 7, it becomes infinite number of colors. And each one gets the full opportunity to express itself. Why? Because why should the divine limit himself only to 1 or 2 or 3? He wants infinite variety. And that's why all the seeming opposites also come into existence.
So the prism occurs in the supermind or the overmind.
The supermind also, there is the beginning of it, because there is the triple status of the supermind, if you remember. But in the overmind, it's very clearly the split begins. But in the supermind, the split is there as a possibility. If you remember the triple status of the supermind, the first status is oneness. Okay? The second status, but this oneness is not the oneness above the supermind, because the oneness above the supermind is pure oneness. But in the oneness of the first status of supermind, the possibility of the many is there. Whereas in the other one, the possibility is not there. That's why without the supermind, there can be no manifestation. So if the divine wants to manifest himself, first he has to say, okay, I'll give myself an instrument which will make it possible for me to become the many. That's the supermind. So the supermind first is the oneness with the possibility of the many. It's the sea which is silent. The second is, I will start making the many. The waves start forming, the swelling. Not the waves, but the swelling start. So each wave is conscious that it is part of the sea. So if your consciousness is at the overmind level, you will know that your body is only one element of matter. Your life is one element of prana, universal prana. Your mind is one small formation of the universal mind plane of consciousness. Your individual soul is one part of the divine oversoul. That's what you realize in the overmind level of consciousness. Okay? Then the third level of the supermind is a swelling starts becoming a wave. And the wave is beginning to concentrate more on its individuality rather than the sea. You come down to the overmind level, you have almost forgotten you are part of the sea. Each wave is now concentrating on itself and says, okay, I want to become this, I want to become that. And it is given the power to become what it wants to be. That's why the one becomes the infinite many. Okay, so overmind law of each force with working out its own possibilities. This is what he means here. But here there comes in the overmind law of each force working out its own possibilities. That means light starts becoming different degrees of light, including darkness, and truth starts becoming different degrees of truth, including falsehood. Ananda reduces itself and becomes the many graded anandas in the world, including suffering and pain. The natural possibilities of a world in which an original inconscience and a division of consciousness are the main principles. In the physical world, dualities are the many are a principle. Would be the emergence of the forces of darkness, impelled to maintain the ignorance by which they live, an ignorant struggle to know originative of falsehood and error, an ignorant struggle to live engendering wrong and evil, an egoistic struggle to enjoy parent of fragmentary joys and pains and sufferings. These are therefore the inevitable first imprinted characters, throughout the soul possibilities of our evolutionary existence. Note that he is using the first imprinted characters, because a divine life on earth is possible, but it's not yet been done. So in the beginning, when you are starting your journey, you are faced with ignorance, lack of knowledge, lack of consciousness, lack of ananda, and lack of force. That's why it's fragmentary. This huge sentence is very clear. One becoming the many, and all the possibilities of the many are there. Okay, so. But note the one word, very interesting, inevitable first imprinted characters. It is the first, but there can be also second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth in the physical world. And the seventh would be the supermental race. So that's possible here. That's why I use the word first imprinted characters. And what are those imprinted characters? Ego, ignorance, unconsciousness, falsehood, and error. These are the first imprinted characters. And he used a very interesting word, imprinted characters, not inherent characters. Imprinted, they are sort of imposed upon you, like a print. This print is imprinted on paper. It's interesting the word he has used. Okay, they are not inherent characters. They are imprinted characters. They are superimposed on matter, sort of. Though not the sole possibilities of our evolutionary existence. Why? Because the possibilities can also be divine in the physical world through evolution. Still, because the non-existence is a concealed existence, the inconscience a concealed consciousness, the insensibility a masked and dormant ananda, these secret realities must emerge. The hidden overmind and supermind too must in the end fulfill themselves in this apparently opposite organization from a dark infinite. So Sri Aurobindo is the visionary who says that there will be evolution will go to the next step. Hardly anybody has had the courage to say that. They have said about it, but there are theories which, there are many different ways they speak about another level of consciousness, but the Sri Aurobindo's real contribution is not only a clear statement of the fact that there will be a next step of evolution, but he has participated in the process and made it possible. Practically, he has been able to do that with Mother's cooperation. They have brought down the supermind into the physical world. We don't know about it, and others don't know about it. But one day, when you are in a supramental consciousness and you want to look back in time, you will see that it is Mother with her infinite force has broken the lid and the light has come down. Because that's a subtle truth which will always remain. So you can experience the past, just as you can experience the future. The Trikala Drishti is a vision of the past, present and future. So, and that will always remain a fact. Today you have to take it on faith that Mother has done this work. But a day will come when everybody will be able to experience it. Because they will be able to go back to the past and see. 1956, if you want very clearly the time, 29th February. Okay, so that completes the paragraph. So now, two things. So, this para is clear. The one becomes the many, and Satchidananda, Sat Chit Shakti Ananda seem to become the opposite of themselves. Why the seeming? Because of our lack of consciousness, lack of the proper instruments of knowledge, and lack of the view of the whole. That's why we see these are apparent. But behind the apparent appearances, there is the divine presence lurking in the background. Okay. Two things render that culmination more facile than it would otherwise be. I'll read the whole para and then we'll come back. What is meant by culmination and what is meant by facile? Overmind in the descent towards material creation has originated modifications of itself. intuition, especially with its penetrative lightning flashes of truth, lighting up local points and stretches of country in our consciousness, which can bring the concealed truth of things nearer to our comprehension. And by opening ourselves more widely, first in the inner being, and then as a result in the outer surface self also, to the messages of these higher ranges of consciousness. By growing into them, we can become ourselves also intuitive and overmental beings, not limited by the intellect and sense, but capable of a more universal comprehension and a direct touch of truth in its very self and body. In fact, flashes of enlightenment from these higher ranges already come to us, but this intervention is mostly fragmentary, casual, or partial. We have still to begin to enlarge ourselves into their likeness and organize in us the greater truth activities of which we are potentially capable. But secondly, intuition, overmind, and even supermind not only must be, as we have seen, principles inherent and involved in the inconscience from which we arise in the evolution and inevitably destined to evolve, but are secretly present, occult, actively, with flashes of intuitive emergence in the cosmic activity of mind, life, and matter. It is true that their action is concealed, and even when they emerge, it is modified by the medium, material, vital, mental, in which they work and not easily recognizable. Supermind cannot manifest itself as a creator power in the universe from the beginning, for if it did, the ignorance and inconscience would be impossible, or else the slow evolution necessary would change into a rapid transformative scene. Yet, at every step of the material energy, we can see the stamp of inevitability given by a supramental creator in all the development of life and mind, the play of the lines of possibility and their combination, which is the stamp of overmind intervention. As life and mind have been released in matter, so too must in their time these greater powers of the concealed Godhead emerge from the involution and their supreme light descend into us from above.
So powerful.
Okay, there's only a 4-line para. I'll read that also and we come back to it. So, what he's saying is, although there is the opposite of Satchidananda in the physical world, it is possible to have a divine consciousness even in the physical world. How? He is explaining that there are degrees and we can climb to those degrees and then we can also bring down those into the lower. So, conclusion. A divine life in the manifestation is then not only possible as a high result and ransom of our present life in the ignorance, but if these things are as we have seen them, it is the inevitable outcome and consummation of nature's evolutionary endeavor. So, a divine life, we'll do the last one, is very simple, that's why. A divine life in the manifestation is then not only possible as a high result and ransom of our present life in the ignorance. The word ransom is using in a very interesting way,
yes.
because what's a ransom? A ransom is the price you pay to get what you have lost. Okay? You, suppose a businessman, a kidnapper takes your son away and you suffer as a consequence, and the kidnapper phones you and tells you, you'll get your child back if you give me $1 million. That's the ransom you pay to get back what you have lost. So what have you lost in the normal man? You have lost consciousness. You have lost power. You have lost omnipotence. You have lost all these things. So, the suffering and the pain that you experience here is the price you are paying to get back what you have lost. That's what he means by ransom. Beautiful word he has used.
Yes.
So, is a result and ransom of our present life. In other words, it also explains the necessity of pain and suffering. You have to go through that to be able to get that. Now, this is a very interesting concept because in the Christian theory also they have, you can't get God without suffering. Now, this is a very interesting principle. Suffering is inevitable, they say. But in Sri Aurobindo has a slight different variation. He says that yes, it is true. If you are ego-ridden and all that, there is suffering. But there is a sunlit path. And the sunlit path, you need not suffer. The obstructions will be there. But you will not suffer if you are surrendered to the divine. You will take it in your stride.
But in Savitri, he also writes, none can enter heaven who has not passed through hell.
Yes. Even in the, he says, even the Redeemer of the world has to suffer what he has himself created. Look at, he gives the Christ, he came to redeem the world. What did the world do to him? They crucified him. What did they do to Socrates? They gave him hemlock to drink and killed him. So this is so Sri Aurobindo himself says in God's labor, I have 1,000 wounds, he says. So he comes to redeem the world and redeem it, but they suffer. So suffering is the price you pay to get something valuable. Okay, we come back to the beginning. Two things render that culmination more facile. What is that culmination? A divine life upon earth. Do we have a divine life upon earth now? Hardly. We see pain, suffering, conflict, disharmony, war, cruelty, all these things we are seeing. In fact, in today's world, we see all that happening in the conflict in Russia and Ukraine. Of course, it is there all over the world, but now it is very apparent there. So, two things render that culmination more facile than it would otherwise be. And what are those two things? Overmind in the descent towards material creation. The material creation is the physical world as we see it. So, has originated modifications of itself. In other words, supermind descends into overmind. Overmind is a replica, a reduced, representative replica of the supermind. There is a connection and yet there is a slight fall. Okay? And then from overmind, there is a next fall to intuition. He is saying, intuition is a plane below the overmind. Or you can also say it's a modification of it. In fact, he says, in the supermind itself, he says, there are 4 powers. First, he says, there is drishti. Drishti means vision. You see the truth, which is represented in the physical world as clairvoyance. You can see the reality. You don't need to think it out or speak it out. You see the reality. Then there is the hearing, inspiration, truth hearing. So, truth seeing, truth sight, truth hearing, intuition. Intuition is the capacity to have knowledge without the process of thought. Then you have discrimination. These are the 4 powers of the supermind. But here he is saying, remember that they are all merged one into the other. It's not a geographical staircase-like thing. Okay, so intuition especially with its penetrative lightning flashes of truth. So he is repeating what he said earlier. Intuition is like lightning. If you remember, the higher mind, I'll repeat because very interesting, because then it becomes very graphic to us. When we are in our normal human mental consciousness, we are like in a dark room. We have to struggle to know the truth. We have to make effort. We have to, when we are reading the Life Divine, we have to concentrate and try to understand the words. Okay, we have to struggle. It's a in Synthesis of Yoga, he says it's a galley slave labor. A galley slave labor, hard labor. And even science is doing that. Of course, science is doing it very happily, but they have to struggle. And they go from one half-truth to the next half-truth to the next half-truth. So this is also science. So, but intuition, okay, that's a normal mind. When you go to the higher mind level, he says it's like a broad daylight. It's not a candlelit room anymore like ours. Ours is a candlelit room. We have to struggle to see things in the room. The room is the universe. Then, when you go to the higher mind, it's like a broad daylight. You don't have to look. You can see things clearly at the higher mind level. When you go to the element mind level, it is light itself that reveals its own character. Each thing reveals its own character. Intuition is like lightning flashes. So, very interesting, he has described. Okay? Intuition, especially with its penetrative lightning flashes of truth, lighting up local points and stretches of country in our consciousness. One particular area, the intuition throws its light and you come to know it. Not the whole. The whole would be at the overmind level. He says it is global. He uses the word global. But lightning very clearly stretches of country and local points.
And how would you define the difference in illumined versus intuitive?
Element is light, but not lightning light. Lightning is tremendous. Luster is 10 times more. No? So in fact, he has given the gradation. Candlelight, daylight, okay, bright light, and lightning light. So you can see the gradation. Okay, so intuition is that which reveals truths about certain things, not everything. When you go to the overmind level, it doesn't eliminate only one area. It eliminates a lot of area. Okay, and switches of continuous consciousness, which can bring the concealed truth of things nearer to our comprehension, and by opening ourselves more widely, first in the inner being, and then as a result in the outer surface self also, to the messages of these higher ranges of consciousness. So, there are a lot of things he has said, but we'll look at one by one. By growing into them, we can become ourselves also intuitive and overmental beings, not limited by the intellect and sense, but capable of a more universal comprehension and a direct touch of truth in its very self and body. Self and body. So, we'll look at each thing, what he's saying very carefully, because he's packing in a lot of information into, so each phrase we have to see, which can bring the concealed truth of things nearer to our comprehension. And by the way, this lightning, intuition, I think we can quite fairly say that Newton, when he saw the apple fall, he had an intuitive flash that it is coming down and not going up. Normally you take it as something very normal and you don't think about it. But he had a flash that there is a gravitational force. Before that in the West, they had no idea of the gravitational force. What about Einstein? It is intuition coming into the mind. Just like our mathematician Ramanujan. Yeah. He also had intuition. He knew that what he is getting is the truth. But he could not prove it mentally. So that's intuition. Okay? So, and it is lighting up only some areas. None of them had the entire truth. But they had flashes of truth in a particular area. Okay? So, by growing. So he's saying, Srivastava is saying, we can raise our consciousness to those levels and we can, inner being, he's talking of the inner being. So inner being, we had a discussion the other day, if you consider yourself to be a house, because remember, you are a microcosm of the macrocosm. The universe, when it reduces itself and condenses itself, it becomes a individual. Whatever is there in the universe is there in you also. So you can enlarge your consciousness and become universal also. That's what the cosmic consciousness is. So, matter is infinite in the universe. You have a small amount of matter in you as a body. Same thing, prana, same thing, the mental and the other things are also there in you, but they are not yet organized and built. You have to build them. The higher mind, intuitive mind, illumined mind, overmind, these are possible. You can, but you have to build them. They are all there, potentially there, but you have to build them. It's like you have a plot and you are living on the ground floor. The other upper floors are not yet built, but you have to build them. How do you build them? Yoga, enlarging your consciousness. Okay? So that is possible. Now he says, so you can do that. He's saying, by opening ourselves more widely, first in the inner being. So we were discussing the inner being. So if you are a representation of the cosmos, whatever is there in the cosmos is there also in you. So there is a vertical, you can, if you have that plot of land, you can build vertically, first floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor. But you can also go into yourself. Like, if you have a wonderful house with a big garden around you, that is the house is your body, mind, life, but the garden all around is the environment. And the environment also is your own. You can go into your, if you want to think only of a 60 feet by 40 feet plot, you have a small house, and at the back of your house you have a kitchen garden. I like to put it that way. Okay? But what is the speciality of that? It's open to the sky. In other words, whatever is in the universe, you can see it. So the inner being is that. Sri Aurobindo calls it the subliminal being or the inner being. So if you go into your inner being, you can have a good amount of cosmic knowledge, but it's also subject to a little bit of error. Okay? So a good representation of the inner being would be the internet. Because what I don't know, I just go, I focus on what I want to know, and I can know at least part of it. But error is possible on the internet. Exactly what is there also in the inner being. It depends. You can have errors, but not so much. Much more knowledge than what you have in your body, mind, life. But that's the inner being. So Sri Aurobindo is saying, first go into the inner being, then go up. Then it is safe. In other words, if you want psychicization first, then spiritualization. The third step, supramentalization. So, Sri Aurobindo, he has not said that here, but the triple transformation is his method. Is his, first you have to psychicize yourself, all the defects of the outer body, mind, life disappear. Then you go raise yourself to the supramental level, spiritual levels, and then the third level is supermind. Then you become master of the universe. Okay, so inner being. Then, as a result, in the outer surface self, also to the messages of these higher ranges of consciousness. In other words, the overmind and the intuition are always trying to help you. They are sending messages to you. They are constantly, it's like a rain coming down. But the lower ranges of existence are denser and denser and denser. So the light that penetrates cannot always successfully enter your mind. But it depends on the individual. If the individual's mind, one individual's mind is clear, the light will come through easily. That's why one individual may be open to the intuition, another individual may not be open to the intuition. Depending on how clear your consciousness is. Okay? So, but you can, he's saying, that's what. So the higher ranges of consciousness are constantly sending messages to you. Not only the higher ranges, but the psychic also is trying to guide you. It is sending messages. By the way, the psychic consciousness is not the conscience. The conscience is something mental. Your conscience sometimes may not be the right thing. But the psychic guidance is always accurate, spot on. It can't make a mistake. But your conscience may only be a half-truth. Okay? He makes a very clear distinction between conscience and the psychic guidance. So, by growing into them, we can become ourselves also intuitive and over-mental beings. If you want that the image to continue, you can raise yourself from the ground floor to the first floor, second floor, third floor. Your view of the surroundings will be much more, you will be able to see much more and understand much more. So you can rise to those levels of consciousness. Okay. We can become ourselves also intuitive and over-mental beings. Your consciousness reaches the over-mental level, not limited by the intellect and sense. So, your mind is limiting you, but also your senses. Okay? But capable of a more universal comprehension and a direct touch of truth in its very self and body. The self is your inner being and your body is the outer construction. In fact, flashes of enlightenment from these higher ranges already come to us. It's always coming, constantly. But this intervention is mostly fragmentary, casual, or partial. We have still to begin to enlarge ourselves into their likeness and organize in us a greater truth, activities of which we are potentially capable. So it's possible to, even when you are in the normal consciousness, you can get more and more truth. But secondly, he has told you two things. So one is to open yourself to the intuition and the inner being. But secondly, intuition, overmind, and even supermind not only must be, as we have seen, principles inherent and involved in the inconscience from which we arise in the evolution and inevitably destined to evolve, but are secretly present, occult actively with flashes of intuitive emergence in the cosmic activity of mind, life, and matter. Okay, make it simple. What are the two things? He's saying a pressure from above and a pressure from below. These are the two things. So there must be a descent, but there must also be an ascent. If a human being is to experience the next step of evolution, which is supramental, he must raise his consciousness from the body, mind, life to the higher mind, overmind, etc. But he must also be able to open himself so that the light enters into you. This is the difference. An ascetic, a yogi, raises his consciousness to the higher levels. His body, mind, life remains imperfect. But Sri Aurobindo is saying, why should the body, mind, life be imperfect? Get the descent. Pull down that light into your mind, life, and body. Sometimes a yogi feels the light entering. I had a talk once with a yogi, and he could feel the light coming into his mind. Okay? He could feel the light, his mind is becoming full of light. Some of them feel that it's entering up to the forehead. Some others feel it is entering up to the throat. If you are very pure in your vitality also, it will enter even into your, up to the stomach or the navel. In Sri Aurobindo's case, he is saying that golden light descended into my feet. So, it depends at which level of consciousness you are and how you open yourself. So, the two things that he is talking about, ascent and descent. He has not used the words here, but that's what clearly he is mentioning. And if you get the ascent and the descent right, a divine life on earth will be possible. That's a conclusion. Okay? So, but we have not gone into detail, so I'll just read out to you until what he has said here. So, matter. So, first is the descent. He has spoken about the descent, but also the ascent. Okay? So, let me point out what he means by that. But secondly, okay, intuition, overmind, and even supermind not only must be, as we have seen, principles inherent and involved in the inconscience, from which we arise in the evolution and inevitably destined to evolve, but are secretly present, occult actively, with flashes of intuitive emergence in the cosmic activity of mind, life, and matter. So, these also are coming out slowly. At present, life has come out and mind has come out, but one day Superman also will come out. It is true that their action is concealed, and even when they emerge, it is modified by the medium, material, vital, mental in which they work, and not easily recognizable. We'll have a small discussion on this. When life is coming, emerging out of matter, it is not abandoning matter. It is incorporating matter and putting life into it. You will find no living creature is only life. It's matter and life. No mental creature is only mind. He has a body and he has a vital and he has a mind. So it incorporates. In the Life Divine later on there will be a chapter, Ascent and Integration. It integrates the lowers into itself. So, in other words, even the supramental man, the Superman, will have a physical substance, but that substance will be modified into a spiritual substance. That's what is meaning by this. Okay, modified by the medium, material, vital, mental in which they work and not easily recognizable. Supermind cannot manifest itself as the creator power in the universe from the beginning. For if it did, the ignorance and inconscience would be impossible, or else the slow evolution necessary would change into a rapid transformative scene. But the divine wants the drama to be enacted. So it's a slow process. Okay. Yet at every step of the material energy, we can see the stamp of inevitability given by a supramental creator. In all the development of life and mind, the play and lines of possibility and their combination, which is a stamp of overmind intervention. This whole sentence very clearly is discussed in other places. He is meaning that even when the action in nature seems to be unconscious, there is a consciousness which is guiding it. In plants, for instance, very clearly they are aspiring towards light and the roots are going and searching for water. Okay. But this is a conscious process. It's very interesting. The root has to go and find the water and it does that. The tip of the root is hydrophilic. It loves water. So it goes and finds. I think I told you once a fantastic thing we saw in the press. We had a tank, big underground tank. And there was a tree just beside. And that tree managed to send its roots, very fine hair-like roots, into the tank so that it could get the water. So isn't that a conscious attempt? So there is consciousness even in that which seems to be unconscious. That's what is meaning. Okay. Yet at every step of the material energy, we can see the stamp of inevitability. Another example is the intuition of animals. Instinct. Intuition becomes instinct in their life. Okay. So the animals, the birds know that they have to fly south because winter is coming. So they go automatically. There is no thought process. It's just an intuition. You can see this in almost every form of life. One can see that. The birds start building a nest before the eggs come. How do they know? But they do it. Okay. A cat starts looking for a hiding place before the kitten comes. Okay. Or even take the most apparent thing, the newborn of an animal starts suckling immediately. How does it know it gets food there? But automatically it goes there and starts suckling. So this is all the guidance which is there behind the apparent inconscience. That's what he's saying here. Okay. Yet at every step of the material energy, we can see the stamp of inevitability given by a supramental creator. In all the development of life and mind, the play and lines of possibility and their combination, which is the stamp of overmind intervention. Then, as life and mind have been released in matter, so too must in their time these greater powers of the concealed Godhead emerge from the involution and their supreme light descend into us from above. So there you are. There's an ascent and a descent. Okay? As life and mind have been released in matter, so too must in their time these greater powers of the concealed Godhead emerge. So it's a rising, emerge from the inconscious, and the supreme light descend into us from above. So the two things that he's talking about is a descent of the light from above, descent of consciousness from above, but also a ascent from the bottom.
An emergence.
Emergence. Because that it's a combination of the two forces that goes to the next step of evolution. This also we can understand in another way. If I take two glasses of water, but I connect them with a tube, okay? If I pour water in one, the level is the same. But if I press here, that one goes up. So, to be able to this to emerge, there has to be a pressure from above so that this emerges. You can think of it that way.
Very beautiful.
Yeah. So, this is what he's saying. There has to be a descent and an ascent. But only the ascent is not going to help. That's what the ascetic is doing. He keeps his body, mind, life imperfect. So, ascent is not enough. There has to be a descent to change the body, mind, life itself. That completes part one.
Namaste all. Thank you for attending.